Okay, this empty greenhouse is officially the beginning of my spring, and here at Domina's Agway, let's talk about it. Okay, so to discuss why this is the official kickoff, I have to back up about 25 years. 25 years ago, we realized that getting aquatic plants for our ponds was very difficult, so we started growing our own water plants, built our first greenhouse right after buying the business. Then realized that one of our good customers came in and he gave Waterfall Paul and I each a bottle of his homemade wine. So that night, we went out in the greenhouses, cracked open the bottles of wine, started potting up aquatic plants. That was officially, to me, the beginning of spring. 25 years later, I try to keep the tradition going. The only difference is now I don't get in the greenhouse that often, so I have to cheat a little bit. So what's going on? Well, first of all, when I come out in the greenhouse after 25 years, I don't get to get my hands dirty in the greenhouse as often as that. So what I do now, crew comes out, they clean the greenhouse, they prep the greenhouse, they get all these empty pots filled up. We get in our first rounds of plugs, and then I still come out here. The difference is now I just go buy myself a bottle of wine, crack open a bottle, and I come out here, listen to some music, pot up the first crop of the season. And let's take a little look about the process, because to me, this kind of wraps my head around the season, kicks off the season in my mind, and I'm probably not going to get to play with the plants that much from that point on. So it's just a little tradition to kind of kick things off. But let's look a little bit closer at what we're doing. So this is how most of our plants come in. We've got, everything is what we refer to as plugs. Very little do we do from seed anymore, with the expense of heating and more of just time and resources. We buy in plugs, and plug is going to come in varying sizes. These right here are all our rock infuses. These are going to be grown out for the early hummingbird season, potting these up in big 1 gallon pots. So we're using a large plug. The hummingbirds are going to be here in a couple months. I need these plants big and full and flowering really at some point in April. So we buy in a real big plug. This is going to cut about a month or so off of production, so that we can ensure that these plants are big and bushy and flowering before the hummingbirds. Now, for our geraniums and a lot of the other plants, these are what we call a 50 count tray. They're about average size for what we get. We get them in trays of 50 up to 100. And we have to stagger everything based on the finish time. So like that tray right there is going to be our big patio tomatoes. That's a bed of bush tomato, same size plug, but I need to grow that out for another 8 weeks before it's going to be fruiting, because by the time that goes to the store, I want that 3 feet tall and I want big fruit on it, ready for instant plantings in your yard. Now the rest of these, a lot of these are all hanging basket crops. So plugs are a little bit smaller, 82 plants come in a plug on a tray. And they're just a smaller plug. So everything we do depends on what we're trying to grow, how fast we need to grow it, how long of a season. Do I need to pay extra for a big plug because I need a quick turn, or can I start with a really small plug? So like our 6-pack material vegetables, these are big plugs, but our plugs for the vegetables are tiny, tiny, tiny. There's like 500 of them in a tray that size, so the plug gets much smaller, but it's a shorter crop. I'm only growing it into a small plant, into a 4-pack or 6-pack plant. So we just play that complicated game that says what size plug is most practical for the crop, and it really comes down to timing, because each one of these benches, we're going to turn these things over 2 or 3 times, meaning we're going to fill up this whole greenhouse right now, and then these plants are going to stay in this warm greenhouse for at least 2 to 3 weeks, get the roots growing. Then from there, we have to pick them up and move them to another greenhouse where they're going to grow at a slightly lower temperature so they stay nice and compact. And we want nice, healthy, compact plants that are flowering based on when we think you're going to want to buy them. And so we're always playing that game as far as where do we move the plants? How do we minimize how many times we're going to move them around? What greenhouses do they have to go in? And so like these rock and fuchsia, I'm going to keep these right in front of the heat. I need these growing fast. I need these blooming really quick, and it's going to take time. The roots have to fill out that whole 1 gallon pot. and fill out, get a nice bushy plant, and produce flowers all in a short period of time. So those plugs, I want those right in front of the heat. The opposite end of the greenhouse, my heater is at that end pushing this way. I have circulation fans in here trying to keep the temperature as comparable at this far end, 100 feet down, as at my other end of the greenhouse, but it's never going to be truly. So the plants that like it cool, these are our cool season vegetables. So all our lettuces, the broccoli, Brussels sprouts, all these are already starting to get planted up and have only just been planted up. So they look pretty ratty because they're coming in these little tiny trays. I mean, this right here is just 500 spinach plants and the plugs are tiny, tiny, tiny. And so we're gonna pop these up, but they want it cool. So I'm not putting these in front of my heater down there where they can get blasted on and off all day long. These are on the ground at the opposite end in the coolest part of my entire greenhouse because these like it cool. And we want them growing nice and slow and compact. Fastest way to get leggy plants is grow them too warm or keep a plant that wants to be in the sun in the shade for too long. Same thing with like this right here. This 800 plants that are down here are all the geraniums. This is the crop of Newport baskets. So if you've been out to Bellevue Avenue in Newport, you see those massive 18-inch hanging baskets lining the streets, they're gonna come in and they're just starting off as a nice little plug, but we're gonna put these in a big 18-inch planter. We're gonna load that up with plugs and keep those plants nice and happy. And they're gonna be big, massive, covered in flowers by the time May gets here. So that's it. That's a little sneak peek as to what my evening is. It's Friday night, around 9 o'clock. It's officially time to kick off the season. I don't know why it's always been night. When I was in my 20s and starting all this, coming out in the greenhouse 9, 10 o'clock at night and working through the night, getting this crop potted up was just normal. And so now, fast forward 25 years later, kind of just tradition sticks. And so that's it. But getting the right plants at the right time in the right conditions was always a challenge for us when we're buying in the plants. Getting what we wanted when we wanted and knowing that what the plant was fed and that it wasn't pumped full of chemicals just made it very difficult to buy in plants. So we started growing. 25 years later, we're still growing for the same reason. I want to do as environmentally friendly production. We're not using big harsh chemicals. We're actually fighting insects with giving them a cold. And so using Mother Nature to fight Mother Nature. But in order to achieve that, we got to do it ourselves. So that's it. We'll check in over time and see how the crops are going. Just figured I'd give you a little sneak peek as to what's going on. Happy spring, and it may be cold outside, but here at Domina's Agway, spring is in full effect. Hope to see you soon. Take care.